I get to do everything a lot of the time. And for some people that may feel a little bit like I have to do everything, but for me, it really is a get to. I have really loved that kind of diversity in my own career and not being siloed as just a sourcer or just a recruiting ops professional. I get to touch all aspects of talent acquisition. And I really enjoy that. I love the diversity of it. It really feeds my sort of innate curiosity. So it's all upside as far as I'm concerned.
Welcome back for another episode of the podcast, asking the questions that recruiters ask 1,000 times a day, and it's time for us to start asking each other, is this still a good time? I am excited today. I'm always excited because everyone I have on this podcast is someone I love talking to. This is someone who is going to bring a very different perspective than anybody else we've had, and we have some fun things lined up to talk about, and she lives a life I'm very jealous of, and she'll probably tell us how we could all live the same life if we wanted to, but I disagree. I am joined by my friend Erin Riska. And Erin, before I get started, I just always need to ask, is this still a good time?
Oh, God. Good time for me. Not a great time for my microphone, though.
Yeah, we have had some audio issues. That is okay. But I also think it's okay to blame it on the fact that where are you today?
I'm joining you from the central Mexican highlands. I'm in a great little town called San Miguel de Allende.
Okay. I have no idea where that is, but I'm sure it is lovely. And where you're recording from looks lovely. Is this a place you're going to be for a while?
It is, yeah. We've been here about 2 months, and we have about 2 months more here in this town. So we're right in the heart of Mexico, and in fact, they literally call it El Corazón de Mexico.
Okay. So for people right now who are like, where I don't understand what's happening, and I said like I'm jealous of the life you live, and I was asking where you're calling from. Tell us just like a little bit about you and like why you're where you are and how you got there.
Sure. So, like you and like everybody else that you have on the show, I am a recruiter. I'm a longtime talent acquisition professional. Came up through internal recruiting exclusively. I don't have any agency experience, but I've been an external recruiting partner for a little over 5 years now, working with client companies to support their hiring needs for a whole bunch of reasons. And one of them is that this provides the autonomy that I want and need in order to live the kind of lifestyle that I want more broadly. So, all of that to say, I, along with my husband and our 2 kids, are digital nomads. We have been traveling the world full time for 5 years, exactly 5 years right now. And are part of a large and growing community of families who live like this. We often refer to ourselves as world schoolers because we sort of use the world as our classroom to support our kids' education. And so we're here in San Miguel de Allende as part of my little side hustle, which is called Rome Base, wherein I organize world schooling hubs for families. So we have 14 families with us here in central Mexico for an 11-week deep dive into Mexico's past, present, future, the culture, the food, the holidays, all of it. So we're about 3 weeks in. We have 9 weeks left.
Okay. So that's so amazing to me. And I think it's one of those things that everyone listening is like, oh, I wish I could do that. And of course your response is what? That we can all do it, right? Because last year when we met at RecFest for the first time, and obviously we had talked before, but like I just remember the same way that I was pushing on everyone, oh, you have to do video, you got to do video, it's good for your career. You were pushing the same way of like, you can do this, take your kids and go, you can absolutely do this.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And that's not to make light of, what it takes to live the life.
Sure.
But for me, I mean, ultimately, I think the message is less take your kids and travel the world full time with them, and more design your life to work the way that you want it to. If that means traveling full time with your family, then go for it. There are plenty of examples like me out there that demonstrate that it is absolutely possible. But that's not everybody's dream, right? There's any number of
Sure.
other things that people might want to do in life, ways they might want their their life to look and feel. And I think it's possible for most people to either achieve that or at least approximate it in a way that feels really well aligned.
Yeah. No, and you're right. Everyone doesn't want to travel the world, of course, but I think that like just hearing about it always sounds so luxurious, and I'm sure there are plenty of hiccups and tough things that come along with it as well. Um, I'm sure just taking kids constantly all around the world isn't the easiest, but no, it's awesome, and I think it ties into like, when we were talking about the recruiting breakdown, which is always where I like to start with these episodes because we like to really dive into something, and of course, us recruiters are always on the verge of having a breakdown. One of the things you pointed out was just kind of like so many of your guests come from big tech and this large kind of like steady might be the wrong word, but background of just like well-known companies. And it's funny because I've proudly never worked at any of them. Never really tried to work at any of them. And you're in the same boat. I don't think this is something you could do, this lifestyle, while also being like an Amazon or a Google recruiter, of course.
Okay.
So that's what I want to talk about, because I think what you said to me really struck. You said that's the majority of recruiters. I think that's the majority of the people listening even to this podcast or that read the Is This Still a Good Time newsletters. Just recruiters are a company that like most of us may never have heard of, or, we've heard of, but we don't really think twice about. And it's not sexy and it doesn't just have that brand appeal that everybody wants, but we are out there kind of, busting our butts to get people there. And I think it's such a good topic because I think it is most people. Has that been like a conscious decision for you? Just the idea of like, I don't want big tech. I don't want the logos.
Yeah, very much a conscious decision. That was really not a part of sort of the most formative years of my career. Most of my career has been spent inside small to mid-sized businesses, and often businesses that were um, local-ish, right? By which I mean limited to the market in which we sat,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a little bit more broadly, kind of at a statewide level. I have never worked for a big national organization, no marquee companies on my
Mm-hmm.
resume. I've worked for amazing companies, really incredible organizations that were doing great work, that were incredibly well led with incredibly talented colleagues who were deeply committed to the work, who were, for all intents and purposes, best in class, considering the class. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, that has been a conscious decision for a number of reasons. First, it was the frame of reference that I came from for a long time, but I also know myself well enough to know that I'm not especially effective in really rigorously structured environments.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, I mean, certainly not always, but generally, the larger an organization is, the more complex it becomes. And then necessarily, the slower things happen. Even in, these kind of highly revered tech companies that say things like, move fast and break things, they still move a lot more slowly than what's typically possible in smaller organizations. And, there's fewer guidelines, fewer guardrails. It's just always felt like a much better fit for me to work in an environment where I can wear a lot of hats. Not only because I want to, but like I genuinely need to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's always served me really well. And to your point, I do think that describes, if not a majority of talent acquisition professionals, at least a plurality. There are a lot of people whose careers are a lot more like mine than there
Mm-hmm.
are people who have enjoyed careers, for example, like Amy Miller or Bonnie
Yeah.
Dilber, right? Who
She
have
names
both
names.
had,
Name her name.
yeah,
Nobody has your career, Amy Miller.
those are my girls. Those are my girls, right? So, and I respect and I admire them. I think they do incredible work. I learn from them all of the time. And ideally, I learn in such a way that I can take some of the best practices from these big name brand premier employers and I can apply them with the kind of companies that I can recruit for. Because, fact is, they can't afford an Amy Miller, they can't afford a Bonnie Dilber,
Mm-hmm.
but they can afford an Erin Riska, and I do pretty dang good work.
When you say it like that, I just felt so devalued. Like they can't afford Amy Miller, but they can afford me, and that's
Yeah,
good enough.
yeah.
But no, I'm with you, right? And it's affording, and yeah, it's also a style, right? It also
Mhm.
is a way, and I think that's something we really want to dive into. And I talk about that all the time when like I get real defensive sometimes because I try and build this sort of name and this recruiting empire for myself, but as like a nobody in reality. And like people do that. They're just like, oh, I've never heard of anybody I've ever worked for. Like your resume is impressive. I'm just like, do you know how much harder that is to
Yeah.
like do what I've done when I can't just say like ex Google recruiter or an ex Microsoft recruiter? Like, you know how much harder it was 5 years ago
Yep.
when the market was very different
Yep.
and you know a candidate could draw their resume on a napkin and hand it to you and get 3 job offers, and I had to try and like get them in. So for the people out there, right, who feel this way now, even because even in a bad job market, even one where candidates are struggling, it can still be hard to fill roles, and I think
Oh,
candidates
yeah.
don't understand that sometimes. um, how do you compete? Like, what do you do as this recruiter? Like, when you know in every reach out, every interview, no one's ever heard of you or the company you're talking about. Like, where do you even start to compete?
Yeah. I mean, this is absolutely a huge factor that companies have to consider. And to your point, yeah, there are industries that are still really competitive. There are roles that are still really hard to fill. And I actively recruit in two of those for those kinds of roles, just as a matter of course, right? So, I mean, it's well established. I don't work for large companies, but I largely don't even touch tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do have clients who are in the tech space more broadly, but I generally don't even recruit for technical roles. It's just not my area of interest. It's not where I feel like I'm being put to my highest and best use, right? So the industries that I have really strong depth of experience in and where I'm actively recruiting right now are in mental health and in real estate development and commercial construction. And these are two industries that continue to be really active, really competitive, especially in mental health. And there are a whole bunch of reasons that recruiting in mental health is difficult all of the time. We simply do not produce enough mental health professionals to
Mm-hmm.
meet the incessant need for services that people in the United States and around the world have. We don't have enough mental health pros. And then beyond that, we don't treat them well enough once we do have them. There are so many restraints on our ability to compensate mental health professionals in a way that really genuinely values their work and their contribution and what they do for society. So it's very, very different from recruiting for a Series B startup that has really incredible VC backing and almost endless purse strings. And I know that that's not accurate. They don't really have endless purse strings, but they have a heck of a lot more
Mm-hmm.
leeway than we often have in the industries that I recruit in. So it is absolutely difficult to both attract talent when you don't have really great name brand recognition. Luckily, the kind of organizations that I recruit for, they do have name brand recognition in their area, geographically as well as, the industry that they're in. But they're still never going to be the big name brand companies that get the headlines that people are talking about when they're, sitting around the dinner table and that sort of thing. So I have to work a lot harder for those organizations. I do rely on inbound. I think because I came from the internal recruiting world and I don't have agency space. I don't have any of these sacred cows and these biases that you often find among people who are coming from an agency space where only a passive candidate, only a sourced
Mm-hmm.
candidate is great or is going to impress the client. I have always, in every company I've ever recruited for, relied on having robust inbound. And robust for small companies looks a lot different than inbound does for a company like Amazon or Google, or even smaller growing companies that
Yeah.
do have great name brand recognition, like Zapier, right? Um, I cannot tell you how few times, fewer than both of my hands, I have worked on a role where I have had in excess of 500 applicants. And for that matter, I would say probably fewer times than I can count on my fingers and toes that I've had a role where I've had more than 100 applicants. We're just drawing from a much smaller pool of people who are qualified for the roles, because especially with mental health, there's no such thing as hiring for attitude or potential. There is genuine rigor with regards to
Mm-hmm.
educational credentials, professional licensure that has to be in place. I cannot hire somebody with the best attitude in the world if they are not licensed to practice. It just doesn't work that way.
Have
You
you
might be all of your
suggested?
friends' therapist, but that's not going to fly.
Yeah. Have you suggested to some of the hiring managers to like go check out some of those memes and see that they could do that?
I mean, it's just the most absurd thing when you recruit in industries where there are these kinds of just intractable requirements
Mm-hmm.
for the work. So yeah, I'm working with a much smaller pool geographically, professionally, in terms of people who are qualified. But I'm still able to get it done because, well, a couple of reasons. I write great job descriptions. I know where to find the people who do the work that I need to bring people in to do. And I take a lot of pride in providing a really great candidate experience. And so it's not at all uncommon for me to wrap up a call with a candidate, whether they're passive or an active applicant, in such a way that they're feeling like they just had a really bespoke experience. They feel
Mm-hmm.
understood. They feel like they will be advocated for. They frequently tell me things like, "This has been the best interview I've ever had." I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting for the kind of companies that I recruit for, but it works.
Yeah. And you're right that I think that's so many recruiters, right? I hear that. I'm like, yeah, that's what my conversations are. I mean, like the most famous company I've recruited for in the last decade, like not since agency life, but it was Teal, right? But
Yeah.
Teal was still a Series A company that like the average person doesn't know.
Yeah. No,
So
really
like,
well known on LinkedIn, but they're still working
yeah.
hard for that
And among
recognition
job seekers, it
beyond.
was a little more known, but like, yeah. So yeah, and I think those conversations are right. And I go out there. We were at RecFest last year. I know you're not joining us this year, but at RecFest, you talk to so many people from companies that just like food service companies or electrician companies. Like who knows? And I think that's where most people are doing this work, but you never hear from it. Right. And they are out there kind of like having to do regular recruiting still, even in this world. And you always point out in conversations with us, like, you're always just like, oh, yeah, I don't work in tech. So like, I don't know this stuff. And like, I think most people don't work in tech, which is
Yeah.
also just a good lesson for recruiters out there struggling right now. Right. Like, there is so much activity. Like you said, there's probably a need for recruitment in the mental health space and in
Yeah.
a lot of these spaces that like you don't even think about. And it might be because you're chasing logos, but it also just might be because like, that's not the recruiting you think of. We just default to thinking of
Yeah.
tech recruiting, I think.
Yeah. Not only to tech recruiting, but also just to really large companies more generally. We think of there being, maybe a chief talent officer with an enormous team with really clearly delineated roles and responsibilities that all cumulatively support talent acquisition, right?
Mhm.
And where people can really specialize and just be focused on recruiting operations, right? No actual recruiting, they're recruiting operations. And they have a colleague who is in recruitment marketing. And they're, again, not recruiting, not talking to anybody, but doing all of that work in the back end that supports it. One of the, I think, both benefits and challenges of working on a much smaller scale the way that I do is I get to do everything a lot of the time.
Mhm.
For some people, that may feel a little bit like I have to do everything. But for me, it really is a get to. I have really loved that kind of diversity in my own career and not being siloed as just a sourcer or just
Mhm.
a recruiting ops professional. I get to touch all aspects of talent acquisition. And I really enjoy that. I love the diversity of it. It really feeds my sort of innate curiosity. It's all upside as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And yeah, that isn't for everyone. And I always hear these things where people are like, oh, it's a red flag if it says you're going to wear multiple hats or multiple roles. I'm always just like, not for everyone.
Mm-mm.
Right? Like, can that be tough? Yeah, is a lot for a lot of us, of course. And I remember the first video I ever made years ago that got any type of like press was I logged into Greenhouse on a Sunday night and was just like, I had 2 roles open and we combined had got like 300 applications, and we were a tiny company. It was just like, this is the start of the bad market. This is a couple years
Yeah.
ago. And I remember like posting, I was just like, this is my Sunday night. Like Monday morning, I'm going to come in and I'm going to have to go through all these. Like, I don't have a team. I don't have an AI software. I don't have any of these things that's happening. It's just going to be me. And most of the people who applied are going to think I'm doing it too slow and not going. And then like the responses were like, oh, well, you should have shut off applications. I'm like, so you think I should have worked Saturday night just like shutting off the applications? But also it would be a red flag at my company if I had to work Saturday night and shut off applications. Just like always goes back to the you cannot win. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think most people don't realize, and most recruiters out there know what it's like just being like a solo person in a world where people imagine this like big machine running it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, that's right. And for my part, um, if I were to join an organization and they gave me only one hat to wear, I wouldn't be long for that place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for many people, being asked to wear a lot of different hats, that is a red flag. But for me, it's pure green. I love that. I love having um, a seat at a number of different tables. I love being able to influence different parts of the business. So that these are all reasons why working in this capacity has just been the ideal fit for me. And I think that the message for talent acquisition professionals out there, regardless of where they've come from in terms of the kind of industries that they've recruited in, the size of companies, age and stage of the business life cycle, whatever it is, you can sort of always reinvent yourself. Um, the fact that I don't come from tech and, yes, I have experience recruiting for Series A companies, right? It's not my preference and my first choice, but the fact that most of my experience has come from other industries, that's really buoyed me over the last few years as we've seen the economy just kind of contract, and we've seen an overcorrection from the overhiring frenzy of 2021 and 2022. We've seen talent acquisition in particular impacted in really just gobsmacking ways, right? My experience, having taken a very, very different path in my own career, has really buoyed me, and I've worked clear through it. I have never
Mm-hmm.
had a week in the last 3 years where I didn't have at least one client that I was recruiting for. And that's because I have more diversity to offer with regards to the recruiting that I do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think that like so many recruiters are trying to figure this all out right now. And that is such a right testament to the work, obviously, because
Yeah.
and you see it. You see the recruiters at a lot of these companies, even if you're not doing it for yourself like you are, right? Recruiters at a lot of these companies that aren't tech and aren't early stage startups who have still never been laid off, who have been at their role for
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 years. So it is possible. Right? We talk about how recruiting is like going through it, and we are. But at
Yeah.
the same time, it doesn't mean recruiters aren't out there and they aren't working and the companies aren't growing. It just
Yeah.
means you might have to shift the kind of recruiting you want to do
Yeah.
or what's out there. And stop chasing the big name. So this is a thing we could go on for forever.
I know.
I do, while we're talking what's out there, right? I always love to move and to talk about what I call recruited in the wild because it's crazy out there. You do. I was like thinking this morning about it, and like you're someone who's very active still, sort of on social media and on LinkedIn, all these things, but in a very different way than a lot of people. Right? If
Mm,
there's like the me and the Amy Millers on like this like extreme side of just like go after people, you are this like sit and watch and learn and maybe not like attack and find the data and things to talk about. Like you make a ton of interesting posts about like BLS statistics and all these things. So
yeah.
people should be following you for that regardless. But I am the kind of person who finds things I hate and makes fun of it on the internet. So I want to get your thoughts on something. Maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. I don't know. I commented, of course. There's a post this week or last week from a career coach who specifically focuses on like helping people take control of their careers, of course, and all these things. Um, and they were saying they don't understand why, it was a little meme. It's like when we hire a plumber, always says, "Can you fix my toilet?" When we hire a doctor, always says, "Can you make me feel better?" When we hire a babysitter, always says, "Can you keep my child safe and happy?" How come we ask a project manager what's your greatest weakness, or marketing director, tell me about a time when you took initiative to work? So I wonder if someone with kids, like, how flippant are you about just who gets to watch your kids, according to this meme?
Oh, I did see that, and, I rolled my eyes all the way into the back of my head as well. So I really admire what you and Amy and some other people do, right? Where you will really take people to task and push back on the really ridiculous things that people say. I admire that, and I don't generally do it. Just it doesn't excite me, right? Like if and when I do tap into these kinds of conversations, I do come usually with like a really boring, very well-reasoned, rational take, and, I always say, if I see a post that makes me feel some kind of way about wanting to give somebody one of my fingers, I use my other finger, my 5th one, my thumb, and I scroll right on by, because 'cause I'm not really
I wish I
interested in
had that
arguing
power.
with right? I'm not really interested in arguing with people on the internet if I think that they are coming at the argument from a place of good intent and they genuinely want to engage in a conversation, then I will do it. I can usually tell if they're just shit posting
Hmm.
looking for a way to like rile people up and like, juice the algorithm. But that particular post and all of the ones like it to me simply read as yes, rage bait, but also or not, if not rage bait, at least just like trying to get a whole bunch of thumbs ups and yes and that sort of thing.
Yes.
It also to me just reads as somebody who is completely incapable of abstract thought,
Yes.
because that's really what this boils down to. Plumbing is a very hard skill. It is a very specific thing, as are any number of other kinds of professional engagements that people might need to hire for. A project manager does work that is incredibly abstract, necessarily. And as such, you need to have a much more abstracted approach to recruiting those people in order to assess for a heck of a lot more than can they create a Gantt chart, right? There's a lot
Hmm.
more to project management than Gantt charts. And so you need to have a significantly more robust approach to finding people who are great at it.
Yeah, that's what like got me. I do try. I think Amy goes a further extreme than me. I've worked. I Most of my argument on the internet tends to come from defending myself. Like what I'm bad at is staying out of like my own comment section, and getting muddy in there.
Yeah.
I do try to sort of do a little bit more scrolling by. But yeah, I do think ones like this get me because it's just like oversimplifying the world of hiring. This person talks about like, oh, when I was hiring, I was like, there's no way when you were hiring, you got a project manager in the room. It was just like, do you know how to make a SWOT analysis?
Yeah.
Cool, you're hired. Like, we know you didn't do that. But now you're here gathering likes so you can sell your career coaching course. And like, that's the stuff that gets me.
Bingo.
And it was just yeah, a plumber's totally different. And like, plumbing is very hard and I cannot do it. But yeah, the question is, can you fix the sink? But I also say I've never just gone to a doctor and say, can you heal me? And like that, no one picks a doctor in that manner either.
No.
So it's like making these charts for kindergartners, and like people on the internet just like eat it up, and it irks me.
Yeah. And I won't fully fault the people who do kind of chime in with that thumbs up or great point and that sort of thing. I think there is a real hunger on LinkedIn and elsewhere, sort of across social media for simplification, right? I mean, the world
Hmm.
is really messy, really complex. It feels like it's increasingly complex all of the time. And I think the reality is a lot of people really feel sort of rudderless and adrift. They don't understand the ways in which the world is changing. They feel like they're being left behind. There's a lot of really freaky stuff happening out there. And so when you just see a post that distills something that feels obvious to you or really intuitive, and it feels like it's just simplifying something in a sea of complexity that you're unable to make sense of, then yeah, you throw it a thumbs up, but doesn't make it true.
Yeah. Even in the way you talk through this, right? You're demonstrating exactly what I was talking about. It's just like you just come at this stuff from such a calm and you just like you seem like you're just always in the most like zen and serene spot to like talk about these things.
My
It's
kids would disagree.
I was about to say like, does this transfer over
No,
to home life?
I have that classic ADHD presentation of I am absolutely at my best in a crisis, right? Like
hmm
if something is a genuine crisis, give me the reins and I am going to be cool as a cucumber all the way through no biggie. I will have a plan in mere minutes. But you give me a minor inconvenience and we're gonna have words and I'm gonna lose my shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think, yeah, it can handle a crisis. The only exception every parent knows is when your kids get involved, because at that point it's just sort of like any moment at any time can be the thing that is just like, this is the one where I've lost it and I can no
Yeah.
longer handle what's happening.
Yep.
I understand for you it was just dropping some glue on the ground, but like for me this was the number. It's over.
Yeah.
We are getting so yappy, which is great. I wanna move on because I do think one of my favorite things on this podcast is talking about our recruiting nightmares. And to me, a recruiting nightmare is everything, right? It can be a candidate, a hiring manager, a process, something happened when you were job searching. But the funny thing is, every time I hear these stories from anyone or people send them into me for the newsletter, I'm just like, yep, that happened to me. And I get all these emails back, but yep, that happened to me. And I think it just sort of builds that community, which is really the goal of all of this. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your recruiting nightmare story.
Yeah. So there's a lot of conversation out there about the role of AI in the job search and people using ChatGPT and other tools like Teal or others to either write or refine their resumes, right? But long before AI had a seat at this resume writing table, and even before, there was such a huge chorus of career coaches and professional
hmm
resume writers doing this, there was somebody else sitting at the table writing resumes on behalf of people other than themselves. And that person is moms. So I remember many, many instances of receiving a resume that seemed so great. Like, wow, this person really looks like they fit the bill. I've got to get on a call and have a conversation with them. And then having the wind taken out of my sails by having a conversation with usually an early career professional, right? Where the way they show up via voice or in an introductory interview is very, very different from how they show up in writing on a piece of paper. And so frequently, um, the impression that I was left with was your mom wrote your resume. You didn't write that resume. Your mom wrote it for you. And then the real nightmare, though, is, I would experience that somewhat regularly earlier in my own career when I was recruiting more early career professionals. But one time, I actually got on the phone for an introductory call, and I am
No.
99.9999% positive it was the candidate's mother. Impersonating the candidate who was a male, in order to try to get him over the hurdle of, a phone screen. So, every single thing about it was, this is not a 23-year-old recent college graduate. This is a woman approaching 50.
They have to know that won't work. Like I can't even fathom. I had a husband pretend to be a wife once to sign a contract,
Yeah.
but that's very different. Like I can't even
Yeah.
imagine trying to get a job interview. It couldn't have gone well. You don't know enough.
Oh, no. It was absurd. In every single way, every way that you would predict, but there are very few things I'm more confident of in life than the fact that that was that candidate's mother that I was speaking with. I've also had crazy experiences like a candidate, supplying a reference and then realizing via quite a lot of sleuthing that it was their wife,
Mm.
impersonating somebody that they'd previously worked with.
Yeah, the fake references are
Yeah.
very real, and I don't think people realize that like it rarely works.
Yeah. Just a lot
Like
of fake it
LinkedIn
going on
tells
in
a lot of
general.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Well, I have to say, as I set this up, saying like in all these stories or things we've all gone through, I have never had a mom do an interview for candidate. I've had them bring them to a contract signing, but never.
Yep.
Okay, that's a good one. Mark that down as like the first time, and anyone I've talked to that I've gotten a story that I'm never like, oh yeah, I have a similar story.
Yep. No moms though.
Okay, yeah, moms will do anything.
Don't do that, moms. Don't do that for your kids. Please
Yes.
don't do that.
Luckily, any moms out there listening, other than my mom, probably are all recruiters who know what a bad idea that is. But yes, if any random moms are listening to this podcast, like let your children go out there and find their own job and fail. Stop giving them advice on what to do in negotiation and everything based on the last time you got a job. It is not working. Bonnie had a story a while ago. She didn't tell in this podcast, but she like posted about, I think, about like a parent who got too involved in negotiation and was sort of just like giving terrible advice, and the person was saying they were talking to their parents. And I've had plenty of that when like talking to candidates, like, oh, I'm going to talk to my dad before I accept this offer. And I was just like, why? Like, what does your dad know about any of this? Like, I get it. Your dad's smart, whatever. This is your job. So, I started this podcast and the newsletter with it because recruiting's hard, and we've talked about this. Like, we're hanging on by a thread. Everyone hates us. We're the least popular people there are. It's just sort of how it is out there, at least for most of us. And one of the things I sort of asked people is sort of like about Cope and community. And, this podcast is really meant to bring people together, and the festivals we go to and all these things really do that, and meet people in real life. What do you do, especially someone traveling so much, right? Like, because you don't have an office, you've never had like coworkers for a long time or all these things. Like, how do you keep that kind of recruiting community and cope with all this?
Yeah, that's absolutely been one of the challenges of the way that I've designed my career and my life over the last 5 years. Even in small companies where I was the only person with responsibility for talent acquisition, I still had colleagues, right, that I could connect with and create community with, that sort of thing. As a longtime HR professional, I've never really sought out friendship in the workplace. I've always felt like I really needed to kind of delineate my personal life and my professional life for the benefit of my colleagues, not for myself, but for their benefit. But not having any sort of professional community immediately around me as a solopreneur, that is one of the challenges. And that's one of the reasons that I've leaned so heavily into LinkedIn, right? That's where my community is. And that has been just one of the most amazing things about the last 5 years is the kinds of connections that I've made with fellow recruiters, you included, and so many others, in the virtual space, right? Everything went virtual, and as did I. Yeah, LinkedIn has been incredible for my business from like a business development perspective. But it's also just personally and in terms of having a professional roundtable, that's been huge. I don't get to a whole bunch of conferences for a lot of reasons, right? I don't have a company that sponsors me being there. Either I've never actually had like literally a sponsorship where like a partner organization sends me, but I've also not over the last 5 years had an employer who has a professional development budget where they send me. So if and when I do show up, it's on my company's dime, and that's a worthy investment a lot of the time. I went to RecFest last year, and it was a real last-minute decision. I flew in from Denmark for like 3 days, just because I just knew I needed to be there, and I really wish I were going to be there this year. They changed the dates, and it falls over my kiddo's 10th birthday, and I just can't miss it.
Sure.
There's a lot of other things I would miss for RecFest, but not that. So yeah, LinkedIn has been just kind of, a lifeline in that regard, from a community perspective, as well as supporting my own professional development. I mean, I just cannot overstate how much I learn from my peers in this space. I love that. Yeah, I do kind of represent a little bit of a niche, not a tiny one, a larger niche of people who work for smaller organizations that don't have big name brand. But boy, I got access to some folks who got the big budgets and the latest tooling, and they really help me all of the time, kind of up my game.
Yeah, and that's advice job seekers hear all the time, but I also think it's advice a lot of recruiters and just everyday workers need to hear. Like, LinkedIn doesn't just have to be about finding a job. It doesn't just have to be about cringe posting and the
Yeah.
memes and the things we make fun of. There is an actual community. And I tell people that all the time, like, networking is talking to people on the internet. Like, that's still networking. It's where so much
It
of us
is.
is. And yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm only friends with people like you and Bonnie and Amy and Red and all the names that have been on this podcast so far, for the most part, because of a connection on LinkedIn that
That's right.
turns into more and more conversation. And there
Yep.
is so much learning. And, people, if they're not following you on LinkedIn, if they don't know who you are, they should be, because like I mentioned earlier, like the BLS statistics posts every month on
Yeah.
its own.
Yeah.
Like when you share on LinkedIn, you're not an everyday sharer. And I think that like most people aren't. Again, you represent what so many
Yeah.
people are like. But when you share something, it's always something valuable. You're never posting just to post. You're never engaging just to engage. You're saying
Yeah.
like, I have something that I think people are going to benefit from seeing, which is where I think most people need to get themselves.
Yeah.
So people should definitely be like reaching out to you there and following you there as well, because I think
Yeah.
you do a great job of doing what I think most people wish they were using LinkedIn for.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And certainly I welcome anybody who hears this. If we're not already connected, reach out. I love connecting with new people, not just recruiters. So I'm always happy to, talk with anybody. And I think for people who feel squeamish about how they show up on LinkedIn and they feel a lot of pressure, or elsewhere for that matter, because I have my own squeamishness, right? Like I don't have any presence on TikTok because I'm not especially interested in video content. And
Hmm.
and I know the thing that I'm going to say next, it does apply to me, and I'm working through my own limiting beliefs on this particular front. If you are only using LinkedIn to look for jobs or to reach out to potential hiring managers and recruiters, or to try to like build your own business via like getting a whole bunch of eyeballs on you via shit posting, that sort of thing, you're really leaving a lot on the table. There's so much more there on offer. And yes, I realize Mike and gosh, Rona too. She gets on me about this all of the time as well. I'm leaving a lot on the table by not
Sure.
using video. Maybe someday. I would
Well,
say
you
I'm
have
the
to do what
latest
works
of
for
all
you.
adopters. I do, and at the same time, that's staying a little bit too comfortable as well, right? I'm uncomfortable with video, and that's probably all the reason that I need in order to start leaning into it, right? I got to push my own comfort limit. Um, but yeah, I think all in good time. Like I said, I'm the latest of all adopters, so like one of these days, once everybody else has been doing video for 10 years, I'm gonna show up.
So there's not always a benefit to diving into everything headfirst before
Yeah,
checking it out.
that's right.
And Red, I tell this to people all the time when we talk about LinkedIn and all of this. And if you don't want to do video, don't do video. If you don't want to post, don't post. Or if you only want to comment, just only comment. Like, do the things that like you like and make the
Yeah,
spend. Don't make it feel like work. Like, if
yeah,
it feels like work to be getting on LinkedIn and making this content because you're supposed to be doing, like, stop doing it.
yeah,
Unless you're getting paid and have to do it or something. But like, you don't have to do any of these things. And I tell people about video all the time. Like, I can watch video and know you were forced to make that video. No, you
yeah,
didn't want to, and you just thought you would try it, and like, you don't like making it, and I don't like watching it. And then you're like, it's not working for me. I'm just like, yeah, like, not everyone has to do everything. But using LinkedIn to find your people is
hmm
is the big key, and I think that's what's
yeah.
so important. It's changed
And
my
you need
life, and
that. You
mhm.
need that to weather this, right? Because I mean, it's not a good time for a lot of people right
Yeah.
now. But LinkedIn is a good place to go and have a good time when you need some support and want to feel like you're getting some traction, or if you just need a distraction. It's great for that.
Yeah, I always reference like the group chats that I'm in and like you're in with
Yeah.
one, which is where we started talking, and like
Yep.
finding those ways is so important. And I had a really good conversation with you. Well, you know her, but other people will, and we'll have her on the podcast eventually. Like Emily Muckin and I finally met like one on
Yeah.
one recently,
Yeah.
and had like this really long meeting, and it like came because of that. And like,
Yeah.
so find those things.
Yep.
Okay, this has been great. I like this conversation. It's so different than some of these other ones, but I think so much more applicable to so many of you listeners. Always to plug stuff. Of course, if you don't like, follow this podcast, review it, do all those things that make this easier. Check out that or check out the Is This Still a Good Time newsletter. If you haven't bought my book, buy it. Even recruiters, you should be buying the book. And the other shows, the Purple Acorn Network. And this has been a great conversation. And I promise I'll be in touch by the end of the week.
Awesome.